5:17 local time. Strait of Hormuz. The first sound is barely there. A thin metallic pulse slips into the headset of the sonar operator aboard the U.S. Navy vessel. It is not loud, but it does not belong. Not in routine traffic, not in this waterway. He leans closer to the display, eyes narrowing. One hand is already near the talk switch. Con, sonar, possible transient, bearing 086. Inside CIC, no one speaks for half a second. Then another sound cuts through the water. A different bearing. Shorter, sharper, too clean to be merchant traffic. Too distinct to be random hull noise. Con, sonar, second transient, bearing 123. The room changes instantly. There is no shouting, no panic, just posture. Heads lift, screens draw attention, pens stop moving. In the narrow blue glow of CIC, every sailor understands the same thing at the same moment. Something is below them. On the bridge, the officer of the deck keeps his voice level. Maintain course, hold speed, CIC, classify. Outside, the surface of Hormuz still looks calm. Tankers move through the channel under the first light of morning. Civilian traffic paints the horizon in scattered silhouettes. The sea is crowded, brightening by the minute. From a distance, it almost looks peaceful, but 40 feet below the surface, the acoustic picture is starting to break apart. The sonar operator listens again, filtering through prop wash, distant engines, and the low mechanical clutter of one of the busiest waterways on Earth. Then he catches a third signal. Con, sonar, third possible contact, bearing 041. Bearing spread suggests multiple submerged sources. That gets attention. The tactical action officer steps closer to the main display. 3 bearings, 3 different sectors. Too clean to ignore, too coordinated to dismiss. One possible contact could be noise. 3, arriving in a spread, is something else entirely. Bridge, CIC, recommends subsurface security posture. Surface. The answer comes back without hesitation. Set condition 3, quiet maneuvering detail. No alarm tears through the ship. No dramatic announcement follows. The transition is quieter than that. Doors seal. Watch teams tighten. Conversations shrink to only the words that matter. On the starboard bridge wing, a boatswain's mate scans the waterline through binoculars, even though he knows the most important thing right now cannot be seen. Below, the sonar picture gets worse. One contact is moving slowly, disciplined, almost too carefully. Another shifts bearing in small, measured increments, as if testing where the ship will be next, not where it is now. The third remains faint, nearly swallowed by the background clutter. But it is there. The captain enters CIC without hurry. He does not ask a broad question. He goes straight to the point. What do we have? The TAO answers with the screen in front of him. 3 probable submerged contacts, classification unconfirmed. Bearings indicate a spread formation, possible coordinated geometry. Any active pinging? No, Captain. Any launch indicators? Negative. Not yet. Not yet. The phrase hangs in the room. The ship begins a slight course adjustment. Nothing dramatic from the outside, just enough to complicate the math for anyone below trying to predict its path. Engine settings shift. The wake changes shape behind the stern. To a civilian eye, nothing looks different. Inside the ship, everything does. Flight deck CIC, stand by for possible air operations. The response is immediate. On deck, the helicopter detachment moves at once. Blades still folded. Tie-down crews in position. No wasted motion. They do not know whether they will be airborne in 2 minutes or 20. They prepare as if it will be 2. In sonar, one contact sharpens for a moment. Con, sonar, contact 086, increasing cavitation. Slight speed change. Can you classify? Not yet, the sonar operator says. But it is not commercial. The captain studies the display. 3 contacts, 1 U.S. Navy vessel. Narrow water, heavy traffic, almost no room to maneuver. If this is a hostile setup, the geometry is efficient. 1 contact ahead, 1 offset, 1 trailing wide, positioned to pressure the stern if the ship turns the wrong way. A destroyer is built to deal with aircraft, missiles, and fast surface craft. But threats below the surface are different. You do not see them first, you hear the intent behind them. Bridge CIC, the TAO says. Recommend increasing speed. Approved. Come to 18 knots. The ship answers immediately. The hum beneath the deck changes pitch. The vibration deepens. The hull begins to push harder through the crowded waterway. Then sonar hears it. A hard mechanical snap, brief, hollow, followed by a rushing acoustic bloom that seems to open the ocean for a fraction of a second. The operator's head lifts. Con, sonar, possible launch transient. Bearing 091. Every pair of eyes in CIC turns toward the sonar station. Say again. Possible launch transient. 091. Stand by, stand by. The next second feels much longer than it is. Then the operator says the words no crew at sea ever wants to hear. Con, sonar, torpedo in the water, bearing 091, fast mover inbound. On the bridge, the officer of the deck does not hesitate. Hard right rudder, all engines ahead flank, deploy Nixie. And in the Strait of Hormuz, at 5:17 local time, the engagement begins. The order moves through the ship like an electric current. Hard right rudder, all engines ahead flank, deploy Nixie. The U.S. warship leans into the turn, steel groaning as the bow cuts hard across the dark blue surface of the Strait of Hormuz. A loose vibration rolls through the deck plates. The ship is no longer simply transiting, it is reacting. Inside CIC, nobody looks up. Every eye stays locked on a screen. Every ear stays fixed to a headset. Every hand is already moving toward the next task before the previous one is fully complete. Behind the stern, the towed acoustic decoy drops into the wake. It is not elegant. It is not dramatic. It is necessary. Con, sonar, torpedo bearing steady 091, speed high, range decreasing. The captain's voice stays controlled. Match the turn, keep opening the angle. The ship drives deeper into the maneuver. White water boils behind the stern. On the bridge wings, lookouts grip the rail as the hull leans and the horizon tilts. Farther out, tankers continue their transit through the channel, their silhouettes still moving under the morning light. From a distance, they may not understand that one American warship has shifted from routine passage to an undersea emergency in a matter of seconds. Inside CIC, the picture is still incomplete. They know one fast mover is in the water. They know there are at least 3 probable submerged contacts spread across different bearings. What they do not know yet is which contact initiated it, whether another is preparing to follow, or whether the inbound track is focused on the ship or the decoy behind it. SLQ-25 streaming normally, one operator reports. Decoy active. That matters. The Nixie is now trailing behind the warship, creating a louder acoustic target than the ship itself, trying to convince the seeker that the ghost is real and the destroyer is not. Flight deck, CIC, launch the helo. On the aft deck, the MH-60R Seahawk is already coming alive. Rotors blur, tie-down chains drop away. Deck crews move fast, low, and precise. The aircraft commander does not need a long explanation. He has heard enough over the net to know what kind of launch this is. The helicopter rises quickly from the deck, nose dipping as it clears the ship, then banks out over the water. Back in sonar, the operator leans so close to the scope, he is almost touching it. Fast mover still inbound, bearing shifting slightly right. The TAO answers first. Could be taking the turn, or it could be adjusting for it. That is the problem with torpedoes. They do not need much time. And in confined water, neither do the people trying to stay ahead of them. The ship continues to accelerate. The stern carves a wider arc through the sea. The engineering plant responds cleanly, pushing the hull harder through the turn without hesitation. Somewhere below deck, sailors who cannot see the water at all feel the angle of the ship and understand only one thing for certain. This is real. Con, sonar, contact 123, increasing noise, cavitation rising. A second submarine is moving, not fleeing, repositioning. The captain hears it and understands immediately. The first contact has forced the ship into a defensive turn. Now another may be trying to use the new geometry before the American crew can reset the picture. Mark that bearing. Watch for a second transient. Above the water, the MH-60R checks in. Airborne. Proceeding to datum. The helicopter races low over the strait, its sensor operator already working the console. Ahead lies a patch of sea crowded with merchant traffic, heat shimmer, and acoustic clutter. Somewhere inside it are at least 3 submarines, 1 inbound fast mover, and a closing window to prevent the next launch before it happens. Then sonar calls it, fast mover shifting, bearing opening. Nobody celebrates. Not yet. The torpedo may be turning away, it may be looping back, or it may simply be searching again, trying to lock onto a different piece of noise. Con, sonar. Decoy effect possible. No impact. Behind the ship, the wake erupts. A column of water punches up off the starboard quarter, high and sudden, close enough to be seen from the bridge, far enough to mean the ship is still alive. The first torpedo has missed, pulled wide past the stern by speed, angle, and the decoy working together. But before relief can settle into the room, sonar stiffens again. Con, sonar, new transient. Bearing 128, possible second launch. No one speaks over him. Repeat, possible second launch. Bearing 128, fast mover not yet firm. The captain turns toward the display. The geometry is changing exactly the way he feared. One submarine forced the maneuver. Another may now be using the new angle. Above them, the MH-60R reaches the first drop point. Aircrew commencing sonobuoy pattern. One by one, the buoys fall into the water. Small splashes appear across a widening arc. Their sensors sink below the surface and begin listening, feeding pieces of the undersea picture back to the aircraft and the ship. Bearings, noise, propeller rhythm, depth clues. Not certainty, never certainty, but enough to hunt. The sensor operator aboard the helicopter gets the first clean return. Possible submarine contact. Bearing corresponds to 086 sector. Narrowband lines present. That is one. Then another buoy comes alive farther south. A second submerged contact possible. Bearing 123 sector. Intermittent. That makes two confirmed sectors. The third submarine is still somewhere inside the clutter. Still quiet. Still dangerous. Below, the warship steadies only for a moment before shifting again. The captain and bridge team are careful not to become predictable. Straight lines put ships in danger, so does predictable speed. Cons sonar, new fast mover now firm, bearing 128, inbound. This one is closer to the beam, harder to pull wide, harder to deceive. The towel looks up at the captain. Second torpedo run confirmed. Above the strait, the MH-60R banks hard into the pattern. Sonobuoy spreading behind it like breadcrumbs over a dangerous patch of sea. And inside CIC, as one submarine contact sharpens under the helicopter's sensors, a worse realization settles over the crew. This was never a single strike. It was layered, timed, designed to make the ship turn before the next shot arrived. And at least one Iranian submarine is still inside firing range. 5:26 local time. The second torpedo is still in the water when the fight changes shape. Until now, the US warship has been reacting, turning, accelerating, deploying decoys, surviving by seconds. Now, for the first time since sonar called the first inbound track, the crew begins building something more valuable than distance, a picture. Above the Strait of Hormuz, the MH-60R Seahawk cuts low across the surface, banking hard over the first sonobuoy line. One by one, fresh buoys strike the water and begin sending acoustic fragments back to the helicopter, then down to the ship. The ocean beneath them is crowded with noise. Merchant propellers, reflected waves, shallow water distortion, thermal layers bending sound in strange directions. But inside that chaos, patterns are starting to separate. Romeo 1 CIC, second torpedo run confirmed. Needs shooter location. The reply comes back immediately. Romeo 1 copies. Working buoy field now. Inside the helicopter, the sensor operator studies the returns with quiet intensity. He knows that one clean narrowband line, one clear pattern in the noise, can change everything for the ship below. He isolates the first contact. Faint at first, then firmer, a disciplined screw signature, a slow depth change, controlled movement. Possible submarine contact 086 sector, bearing drift minimal. That is likely the first shooter. But before the crew can fully settle on it, another buoy comes alive farther south. Second contact possible. Bearing 123, intermittent cavitation. That makes two. The third submarine still has not clearly revealed itself, and that is exactly what makes it dangerous. Back aboard the warship, the second torpedo forces another course decision. Hard left 5 degrees, keep the decoy streamed. The helm answers. This time, the ship does not swing wildly. There is too much traffic, too little room. A violent turn in the strait can save a ship from what is below, only to place it directly in the path of something on the surface. The bridge team is now balancing two dangers at once. The threat beneath the water and the crowded traffic around them. They are threading a warship through one of the world's narrowest strategic waterways while submarines work somewhere below. Con, sonar, fast mover, bearing 128, now shifting aft. Possible decoy attraction. Possible. Not certain. Then at 5:27, a wall of water rises behind the ship, close enough to rattle the bridge windows with a dull rolling thud. The second torpedo has missed, not by much. Still, no one exhales, because the sonar supervisor says the one thing that matters most. Both probable shooters still on the board. The captain studies the tactical display. Now he can see the pattern. One submarine fired from the forward quarter. Another tried to catch the ship during the defensive turn. The third has stayed almost perfectly quiet, sitting outside the obvious search line, waiting for the Americans to commit too far in one direction. They are not just making runs, the captain says. They are boxing us in. The TAO nods once. Coordinated geometry. Exactly what CIC feared from the first minutes of contact. Then the first submarine begins moving more aggressively. The helicopter's buoy field catches it trying to slide towards shallower water near a cluster of merchant routes, using civilian traffic noise to blur its signature. The move makes tactical sense. In shallow water, surrounded by clutter, with tankers above and thermal layers below, a small diesel-electric boat can become almost invisible again if given enough time. The captain has no intention of giving it that time. Romeo 1, prosecute contact 086. Keep pressure on. Do not lose him. The MH-60R dips lower. The crew is no longer only observing. They are hunting. A sonobuoy pattern expands ahead of the contact's escape path. Another buoy drops behind it. The sensor operator begins building a cleaner line. Shaft rate, bearing change, speed. The contact is now maneuvering harder, and that helps the Americans more than it helps the submarine. A quiet boat is dangerous. A moving boat is readable. CIC Romeo 1. Contact 086 increasing turns. He knows we are on him. That is the first real shift in momentum. Not victory, not control, but pressure. Below, the ship's sonar team keeps working the deeper problem. The second contact fades, then returns. The third still refuses to come into focus. Every few moments, there is a whisper of machinery, a trace of movement, then nothing. It is like tracking a shadow under dark water. At 5:30, the captain makes a measured decision. Single active pulse, narrow sector. The order moves through the ship. On the sonar display, the American warship sends out one sharp active ping. Not a sustained search, not a loud signal across the entire strait, just one controlled burst aimed into the sector where the hidden submarine is most likely waiting. The result is immediate. One contact spikes and turns hard. Another increases speed for several seconds, then tries to go quiet again. And the third finally reveals the smallest but most dangerous clue of all. A brief depth change, a clean shift in bearing, much closer to the warship than anyone wanted. Con, sonar, new close contact, possible third submarine, bearing 057, closer, quiet, moving in. The captain's expression does not change, but the room does. The first two submarines can be pressured from the air. The third is now the real danger, still inside the engagement zone, still holding back, still searching for the best angle. Over the water, the MH-60R crew spots a disturbance below, subtle, unnatural. A quick boil and shear in the water where no surface craft should be. The contact they have been pressing is diving and turning hard. Romeo 1 to CIC. Contact 086 maneuvering aggressively. We can force him. Approved. Warning prosecution pattern. No drama, no speech, just action. The helicopter drops another buoy line, then moves into position for possible engagement if the submarine continues its run. It is enough to make the first contact break harder, exposing more noise, more instability, and more urgency than before. But inside CIC, almost no one is focused on that contact now. Because sonar has the update everyone feared. Con, sonar, contact 057 now closing, bearing rate increasing. The captain turns toward the display. The hidden submarine is not backing away. It is coming in. 5:34 local time. By now, the U.S. warship has survived 2 torpedo runs, forced one submarine into evasive movement under helicopter pressure, and exposed a second contact in the clutter south of the shipping lane. But the third submarine, the quiet one, the one that never rushed its move, has become the center of the fight. Con, sonar, contact 057 now classified probable submarine, close aboard. The words land hard in CIC. Close aboard means there is no comforting distance, no long window to study the situation, no luxury of letting the helicopter solve the problem alone. Somewhere off the warship's forward quarter, inside the confused acoustics of shallow water and commercial traffic, a submarine has slipped into the kind of range that turns a tactical problem into a survival problem. On the bridge, the officer of the deck studies the surface plot. Tankers ahead, a merchant vessel broad on the starboard side. Another hull farther east moving southbound through the lane. There is space to maneuver, but not much. Every degree of turn now carries consequences above the water as well as below it. The captain makes the calculation in silence. Come right 3 degrees, not more. It is a restrained order, and that is what makes it tense. A harder turn might help against the submarine. It might also push the warship towards civilian traffic or expose the stern to the wrong sector. The crew does not get to choose between a perfect anti-submarine move and perfect navigational safety. In Hormuz under pressure, there is rarely a perfect option. Romeo 1 CIC, priority contact has shifted. New probable submarine bearing 057. Closer to own ship. Can you cover? The MH-60R is already banking back. Romeo 1 copies, repositioning. Below, sonar listens through a storm of reflected noise. Merchant propellers hammer through the water. Thermal layers bend sound in difficult ways. The shallow bottom throws echoes back into the picture. Every return is imperfect. Every bearing carries doubt. But contact 057 is there. Closer than before, quieter than the others, and moving with purpose. The shallow bottom throws echoes back up toward the hull. But the submarine is there. Quiet, disciplined, moving only enough to remain dangerous. Bearing steady. That matters more than speed. A steady bearing from a close submarine can mean only one thing. It is holding the geometry it wants. At 5:35, the captain stops treating the contact as a possibility. Go active. This time, the warship does not send a narrow test pulse. It sends a stronger, deliberate active emission into the water ahead. The sound leaves the hull like a hammer strike, invisible above the surface, powerful below it, lighting up the undersea space around the contact for a split second. The response is immediate. Con, sonar, contact reacting, rapid depth change, bearing 056. He heard it. Good. Now the submarine knows it has been found, and a found submarine has to make decisions quickly. Dive, turn, launch, or run. Every option creates noise. Every option gives something away. On the Seahawk, the sensor operator catches the echo pattern and begins stacking buoy data against the ship's active return. Romeo 1 has a possible track, tightening. A fresh sonobuoy splashes into the water, then another. The helicopter crew lays down a compact prosecution pattern directly across the submarine's likely escape route. The goal is not spectacle. The goal is to collapse uncertainty, to shrink the submarine's choices until none of them are good. Back on the warship, the engine pitch changes again as the captain orders another slight increase in speed. The deck vibrates underfoot. Inside CIC, no one looks away from the tactical display. Then sonar hears it. A hard metallic event, sharper than machinery, cleaner than cavitation, followed by a sudden fast acoustic bloom. The operator does not hesitate. Con, sonar, possible launch transient, bearing 057, close range. The bridge reacts instantly. Hard left rudder, deploy additional countermeasures. This torpedo run is different from the first two. It is closer, tighter. The timeline is brutally short. There is less room to pull the weapon wide, less time for the decoy to draw it away, and less margin for hesitation. The warship leans into the turn. Outside, the sea erupts in wake. The stern digs in. The stream decoy whips through disturbed water behind the ship, throwing acoustic confusion into the torpedo's path. On deck, sailors grip steel and say nothing. Above them, the helicopter shifts from pressure to immediate response. Romeo 1, weapon solution possible. Cleared to engage if confirmed. The submarine below has forced the moment. It came in close. It made its move. Now it has to survive the answer. A lightweight torpedo drops from the MH-60R and hits the water in a sharp, clean splash. No drama, just procedure. Fast, practiced, final. Once in the water, it begins its own search, turning the hunter into the hunted in a matter of seconds. Then everything happens at once. The warship's sonar picture spikes with overlapping noise. Its own decoy, the inbound weapon, the helicopter's torpedo entering search. The submarine below changing depth and speed with sudden urgency. For a few seconds, the ocean sounds like tearing metal and boiling machinery. Then a low underwater detonation rolls through the hull, not a direct hit. Not the catastrophic shudder of a ship being struck. A blunt concussive thump trembles through the bulkheads, the bridge glass, and the boots of every sailor standing watch. A column of water rises off the port quarter. Con, sonar, inbound weapon lost. Lost can mean several things. Decoy success, fuel exhaustion, premature detonation, interference from the submarine's own urgent maneuver. In that moment, none of those explanations matter. What matters is simple. The ship is still afloat, the crew is still in the fight, and the closest submarine has finally revealed itself. The ship is still there, still moving, still fighting. But the submarine is no longer quiet. Contact 057, increasing cavitation. Fast turn, bearing opening. It is pulling away. Almost at the same moment, the first submarine under helicopter pressure breaks farther south, abandoning the coordinated pattern it helped create. The second fades deeper into the clutter, no longer holding its previous line. The geometry that had threatened to trap the warship is starting to fall apart. The captain watches the symbols separate on the display. For the first time that morning, the three Iranian submarines are no longer moving like a single formation. They are trying to leave alone. 5:46 local time. The first sign that the engagement is ending does not come from celebration. It comes from separation. On the tactical display inside CIC, the three submarine contacts that had spent the last half hour converging, boxing in, and launching in sequence are no longer moving with any shared geometry. One is heading south towards shallower water. One has dropped deeper into the clutter, fading by design. The third, the one that came closest and forced the most dangerous moment of the morning, is opening, bearing fast. It is louder now, less disciplined, no longer pressing forward. It is leaving. Con, sonar, contact 057, increasing range, bearing opening steadily. The captain does not answer immediately. He watches the movement for several more seconds, waiting to see if the pattern changes. It does not. Maintain prosecution. Do not assume disengagement. That is how warships survive. Not by trusting quiet water, by verifying it. Above the Strait of Hormuz, the MH-60R remains in orbit, banking through another turn over the buoy field. Fuel state is becoming a factor, but the helicopter still has enough time to do what the ship needs most right now. Confirm that none of the submarines are circling back for one final run. Romeo 1, CIC, status contacts. The reply is calm, almost clinical. Lead contact from 086 sector is moving away from datum. Southern contact intermittent, deeper, no engagement vector apparent. Close contact from 057 is increasing range at speed. That is the first full sentence anyone has heard all morning that sounds like survival. Still, the warship does not relax. Helm orders remain deliberate, speed stays elevated, decoys remain streamed. Sonar keeps searching through the undersea clutter for any fast mover, any new transient, any sound that does not belong. Nothing comes. Outside, Hormuz almost looks ordinary again. Tankers hold their lanes. Heat shimmer rises from the water. The shipping channel remains crowded and indifferent. From a distance, no one watching from another vessel would understand what had just happened beneath that calm surface. 3 Iranian submarines had tried to trap an American warship in narrow water. Inside CIC, they understand it perfectly. One run from the forward quarter, a second timed against the defensive turn, a third launched from close range, the most dangerous of all. Not random pressure, not a warning, a coordinated undersea trap built around geometry, timing, and limited sea room. And it failed. Bridge, CIC, no current inbound weapons, no new launch signatures. The officer of the deck acknowledges in the same flat tone he has used all morning. There is no edge in his voice now, but there is no softness either. The captain turns back to the display. The 3 contacts are farther apart now. Whatever plan had existed below the surface is gone. The submarines are no longer trying to press the engagement. They are trying to preserve themselves. That matters. Because submarines approach in silence, but they rarely leave that way. Depth changes, rudder corrections, brief cavitation, small mistakes made by crews who know they are being tracked and no longer control the rhythm of the fight. The MH-60R had forced one boat to maneuver. The ship's active pulses had exposed another. The third had moved in close, made its attempt, and lost its advantage the moment it had to break away from the helicopter's response. Once the formation lost synchronization, the box disappeared with it. Recover helo when ready, the captain says. Keep the buoy field live as long as possible. On deck, the recovery crew prepares for the helicopter's return. No one moves like they have won anything. They move like sailors at the end of a dangerous evolution. Focused, tired, and fully aware that tired is when mistakes happen. The Seahawk comes in low over the stern, steady despite the ship's speed, and settles onto the deck in a wash of rotor noise and spray. Chains go on. Rotors begin to spool down. The aircrew steps out carrying the real prize of the morning. Not drama, not footage for headlines. Data, acoustic recordings, sonobuoy tracks, bearing shifts, weapon timelines. Enough evidence to reconstruct the entire encounter in exacting detail. Below deck, inspection teams move through engineering spaces and aft compartments, checking for shock effects from the near underwater blast. Shaft integrity, hull response, sensor status. Nothing serious. The ship is intact, combat capable, still on mission. Only then does the tempo begin to drop. Not quickly, not visibly, just enough for one sailor to finally loosen his grip on the edge of a console. Enough for someone on the bridge to blink hard and realize he has not moved his feet in 10 minutes. Enough for the silence inside CIC to feel less like pressure and more like exhaustion held under control. At 5:58, sonar makes the call the entire ship has been waiting for. Con, sonar, no active engagement geometry. All 3 contacts outside immediate threat range. The captain nods once. No speech follows. No cinematic line. He simply gives the order that matters. Resume transit. Stay sharp. And that is how it ends. Not with debris on the surface, not with a triumphant broadcast, but with an American warship still on course through the Strait of Hormuz after surviving a coordinated undersea trap in one of the tightest maritime choke points on Earth. 3 Iranian submarines entered the engagement together. They timed their positions, layered their moves, and nearly got inside the ship's decision cycle. For a few minutes, they had the geometry. They had the concealment. They had the initiative. Then the U.S. warship worked its way out of the box. With sonar teams that never stopped listening, with decoys deployed in seconds, with a bridge crew balancing underwater danger against civilian traffic, with a Seahawk crew that turned fragments of noise into a hunt, and with a captain who never gave the submarines the one thing they needed most, a predictable target. By sunrise, the sea looks the same, but below it, 3 submarines are withdrawing into deeper uncertainty, and above it, 1 U.S. warship is still moving forward.